Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Changing Room podcast. This is episode 5. Today, I spoke to a friend of mine and a super amazing, stylish person here in Cleveland who has honestly been on my list from the beginning. Aimon Ali moved here to Cleveland from Toronto about 4 years ago, and with her, she brought a pretty ambitious and inspired goal, and that's to help activate the fashion community here in Cleveland through her business Fashion Talks. And since then, she's hosted 2 runway shows featuring small designers from Ohio and beyond, and has hosted other events around town. And so I'm really excited to share our conversation today. We talked about truly everything along the spectrum of style and fashion, everything from her personal style, how it's changed from Toronto to Cleveland, her thoughts on the future of fashion influencing, as well as her no-nonsense advice on working in the fashion industry. Thanks for listening, and let's get into the changing room. Hi, Aimon. Thanks so much for being here for the 5th episode of the Changing Room podcast. This is also our first episode here in our new studio space with Black Valve. So thank you so much again to Evan Prunny and Black Valve for producing this. This is super exciting. And Aimon, you and I just finished up just last weekend doing a closet swap event in Cleveland here. And I figured this would be why not just do a follow-up while we're kind of like, a lot of things are fresh in our minds and we can just chat. Awesome. So
thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. No, thank you for being here. You've been on my list for a while because, everything you do around Cleveland and all of your experience, it's just always such a joy to chat with you. So the first question I like to ask everyone is just tell me about your outfit. What are you wearing? Are there any stories behind what you're wearing? Just kind of walk me through it.
So I'm wearing a blazer, and I feel like I've been really into blazers recently. Like 3 years ago, you wouldn't catch me dead in one because I didn't think it suited my style. But now I'm very into fun blazers. So just a fun green blazer, and then the shirt you can't really see under. But this was actually like not exactly thrifted, but one of the influencers that I follow that I love her style, she was doing like a closet sale, so like I got that through her, and then my hijab, trying to try out different styles. It's always a struggle trying to figure out what kind of suits your face shape, but it also goes with like your outfit in terms of like draping. So yeah.
What kind of style are you kind of trying out today that's different than what you usually do?
Usually I like, it's tighter and I'll like pin it here and it's totally tight on my face, but I'm trying to do this more looser draping, like experiment with more colors. I know I'm wearing black, but
yeah, no, I love green and black is such a classy combination.
Black is like my power color, so
yeah, I love it. No, I love black too. It's like I was just thinking about how black is just been my kind of safe space recently, especially like this week when I've just been kind of decompressing and just really wanting to be comfortable, but I still want to be cute. I was just gonna say it's a very all black comfort outfit. Color for me too. It is. It just keeps you like consistent. I don't know. It's just always there. And then are there any kind of like other? I know you said we talked a little bit about before our event. So we hosted a closet swap and shop event last weekend, and it was also kind of gave us a chance, and hopefully anybody who came, to kind of add a magnifying glass on our style. How has it changed? So what would you say is kind of like any trends or styles or specific colors that you're kind of like gravitating towards right now that maybe you weren't before?
Interestingly, I think I'm gravitating to more color in general. I think I got into like kind of the new tones, dark colors for a while. But now I'm trying to get back into my like colorful life, but definitely like green, purple. I'm letting go of the yellows. So
me too. I think we both had that in common. I'm like, I just can't style yellow. There's people who can. Yeah. I just have been letting it go too.
I feel like I could, like, past Aimon and her style, she definitely could. But now what I'm looking at, I don't, unless it's like an accent piece, I don't think it's something I see myself wearing. So yeah, I just see a lot of colors, maybe more dresses, skirts. I love that. Just a lot of experimentation. I think I'm changing some stuff up.
Yeah. You told me you were kind of like switching it up a little bit, and I feel like, you know.
Yeah, I'm in like a transition period where I'm trying to figure out like exactly what I really want to wear or what I want to style, or like what is it that I'm like, you know, like that future idea you have of your like ideal style. Like I have my Pinterest board, and now I'm like looking at, okay, like what are the pieces that I'm missing, and what can I get rid of that no longer serves me, you know, kind of why we did the closet swap too.
Yeah, I feel like that helped me a lot too. I kind of was like thinking through pieces that I needed to let go of, but also finding some that I like forgot about. And I'm like, wait, I actually kind of like this. You know, maybe 3 years ago I put away this piece because I thought it wasn't me. But then as you kind of become, I don't know, I call it settling in, like you settle into yourself a bit more. You're like, oh, maybe these things do fit, and maybe I know, have a clearer image of what my style is. Do you have any big like style inspirations as like right now, influencers?
I do.
Celebrities?
Definitely. I think I'm more of a influencer.
Yeah.
So there's like 3 main influencers I would say that like come to mind right away. One, I feel like I'm gonna say her last name wrong. Blair Eddy. Not sure if that's how it's pronounced. Her style is like absolutely, I wish I could be like that. She's like super colorful, very playful, a lot of patterns, lots of dresses, skirts, like maximalist, but also like very modest. She's not a modest fashion blogger, but I feel like her outfits are things that I could very easily switch into my closet. And then there's Leonie Han. I just love her style in general. I don't think I could wear half of it, but absolutely bright colors, cute tiny bags. Love tiny bags. Like shoes that are like statements, all about it. And then there's one like Muslim modest blogger that I love. Her name is Duha. It's like Styled by Duha. She, like, every time I see her style her hijab, I'm like, how do I do that? like when I look at her, I'm like, she's so classy. Like I want to do that. Like she's always wearing like the cutest hats, and like she's just accessorizing, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about that. So it's like a mix of these like girls that are very well known, and then like, you know, just changing things up.
I feel like one really just cool thing about social media in general, and I think TikTok has magnified this, and even like Instagram, there's just such a wider variety of style inspiration sources, like of like outfit inspirations. I even see that, like, me personally, like I feel like after downloading TikTok, there's just so many more people that have just such challenging outfits, kind of like something different. And like I love how you said that there's like certain outfits that you see these influencers wear that you maybe don't want to recreate piece by piece, but it still inspires you. And I think that's like, to me, that's like the key, right? It's like, it's not about copying it. Exactly.
Yeah. Like especially with Leonie, like she wears a lot of like super, like, I don't even know how to, like, you know, like the dresses that are short and they're just feathers, or like they're just a really like standout piece. She wears a lot of her style. I look at it and I'm like, there's no way I can wear this because it's not modest, but like, how do I wear something that gives off this like effect?
It like challenges you to think about it. I think that's like such a good way to look at it, because the one thing I will say, I feel like sometimes I don't know if you've noticed this, well, I think with like, I don't know, a lot of times with like influencer culture, I think sometimes people look at influencers and they're like, how do I just get exactly what this person is wearing, and
copy paste.
Copy and paste. And again, I just think that is not finding your personal style, but that's just like, I mean, just do what Aimon does. Like, I mean, this is like, it's, you know, it's not about like, you know, it's about kind of pooling what speaks
like your
to you
personal
and adapt
style. I know there was like this debate kind of still going on about like the newer influencers that just kind of copy paste, where they're wearing like a pink dress with pink heels and a pink bag. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, but like, what was the thought process, or is there styling technically?
What's the story?
Because a lot of people are arguing that, well, a lot of them just blew up because they're just wearing one, like they're wearing exactly what they saw, where there's no actual like thought process behind it.
No, I know what you're talking about. Or certain like pieces that go crazy. You know, they
Yes.
like I don't know, even like the saddle, you're wearing
I
the
was gonna
Dior
say,
saddlebag.
yeah.
Like it was everywhere. But like it's funny when you walked in today, I didn't even notice it was the Dior saddlebag yet. Like it just the way I think you blended it in with your outfit, and I've seen you wear it before. I don't know. It's just kind of like you're not
It's not the
depending all on
reason
it.
for my
Yeah.
outfit. It's
Yes.
like an accessory. Or like the Miu Miu skirt.
Yeah.
Was it the everybody was wearing that.
I know. And it's
And with the same top.
yeah. And it's like, but how can we like remix it? I mean, that's all your personal style is like it's a remix of what you see on the runway, what you see in ads, what you see on someone else. So yeah, I don't know. That's why I just really love personal style, and
I agree.
it's definitely psychological as well.
Yes.
And this kind of ties in with like psychology. I guess my first question just about, and we've talked about this a little bit before off camera, but just the difference between getting dressed in different cities. So, you know, you lived in Toronto before you moved to Cleveland. So you've been in Cleveland here for 3 years? Has it 4 years already?
I think it's like 4.5 now.
Yeah. So like what are some of the biggest differences you've seen? What have you kind of had to adjust to, if anything?
A lot.
Yeah.
So first of all, yeah, I lived my entire life in Toronto, GTA area, and you don't really realize what you're in until you leave. And like when I left and moved to Cleveland, it was like a shocker because I realized, okay, yes, Toronto's like a very big, diverse city, and then Cleveland is like a mid city. You know, we're not that big, we're not New York, but we're also not that small.
Yeah.
Our diversity, there are pockets, you have to find them, but our style overall is very safe. I like to say. What I wore in Toronto, for example, if I wore that here, I think people would definitely like be like, where is she going, or what is she wearing, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and I think that really affected my style in the beginning. Like when I first moved here, I was kind of lost because, you know, in Toronto, I worked in the industry. So it's like I had events to go to. I had reasons to dress up. I had other friends who dressed up as well. Like even if we were meeting for coffee, like I knew like certain friends were definitely going to be looking more extra, that it didn't even matter what I was going to wear. You know, like it was, okay, yeah, I can be comfortable wearing whatever I want.
Yeah.
And then in Cleveland, it was just a lot of people don't dress up unless it's like an occasion. But even then, it's not the way people in Toronto or New York would dress up. So when I got here, I already looked different. I already was standing out. And then on top of that, I dressed a certain way.
Yeah.
So I think the first like 2 years and then COVID hit, I really started dressing down, or like trying to be like, just like, you know, no color or very bland, because I was influenced by the people around me. And then I got to a point where I was like, this isn't me. You know, like I'm not someone who's gonna wear a black blazer and black pants, because that's not what my work is. Like I work in a creative industry, so why am I dressing like I'm in a corporate job? You know, like because everyone's either in the medical field or like in a corporate office. And then after like COVID, when I started Fashion Talks, I started being like, okay, now I have a reason to dress more. And then New York Fashion Week, and then I think this past Fashion Week, that's when I was really like, you know what, I need to transition back.
Yes, you told me that.
Into more color, into what I enjoy, and like I really don't care what people think about what I wear, right? And I feel like I was when you move somewhere, you know, it's a big thing. Like you move, you lose your friends, because like all my friends and my family were in Toronto, and it's just a different city, and you're an adult and you have to make friends and you have to work, and like there's just so much, and like I feel like sometimes our style gets like repressed or like affected. So now I'm like on this transition back into like Aimon.
I love that. And it's a good point how it takes time, right? I think it just takes time, because you're kind of figure out what you're doing in this new place. You're kind of getting acquainted with other people. And I feel like through your business Fashion Talks, I feel like it helped you probably connect with more like-minded people, because that's something I've talked about with Hannah, I think for episode 2 or 3, she talked to me. We talked about this topic also, and she moved from Chicago, and then before that, she was in Baltimore. So she's always, she mentioned how, she's just gonna wear what she wants. She has a very colorful 70s style, and she's like, it'll attract the people that I want.
Absolutely.
Or it'll deter the ones
yeah,
I don't
that's
want.
what I say to him. Like, you know what? It's going to save me the hassle of having to deal with people that I don't want to.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to attract the people that like me or like my style or that are attracted to that. And I'm going to deter the people that don't. And that's fine because we don't need those people.
And that's why I just always get so frustrated when people talk about how fashion doesn't matter. Fashion matters so much.
A lot.
What we wear, it's a form of communication. It's like form of communication that is happening a lot of times without us even realizing. Because obviously we are consciously putting our outfits together, and you want your outfit to say a certain thing, but then somebody else is going to interpret it slightly differently.
Yeah.
And it affects your perception and everything.
I don't think people realize how much it actually affects you from like a psychological point of view,
Yeah.
And I know we talked about this a little
Yes.
bit, but like I was a psych major and I did study a little bit about fashion psych, and it's crazy because it doesn't even have to be fashion in the way that we look at it. Like there was a study done where they had students take a math test, okay? And that was fine. And then they made them retake the math test, and they told them to wear like a white coat, like a they didn't say it was a doctor's coat, but it looked like one.
Oh.
They all did better because they just assumed they were smarter because of this perception we have around doctors.
Yeah.
Right? And if it's crazy because it's like that's absolutely not even like fashion industry fashion. You know what I mean? But to know that when you dress up, you feel better.
Yes.
Whether you realize it or not, or there might be pieces that when you wear them, you have like, certain emotions or feelings that you feel like maybe you've always worn that blazer and you've had bad news. Like you're going to associate that something bad's going to happen. And I don't know if we don't think that. Like I don't put on this blazer and I'm like, oh, this is my like good luck blazer, so something good is gonna happen, I'm gonna look for it. It's just like this thing in the back of your mind where at the end of the day I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna be like, it was a great day, and like last time I wore this, it was a great day too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think our clothing is really weaved into like our daily rituals, and we sometimes don't even notice it. And I think, when people say like, oh, fashion doesn't matter, I'm like, the fact that you think it doesn't matter is it matters. Do you know what I mean?
'Cause like you're thinking about it enough.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the fact that like it's doing work while you're doing other things. You know what I mean? Because there's people out there who just they think that they don't care about clothes, right? Because they're like, I just throw on a jeans and a t-shirt. And I'm like, that's great. That's your style. That's you fall into a certain, spectrum of style. And I don't know, I just think it's so cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really interesting how like, I'm glad you're finally finding your way. I know, I think I even had to do the same thing, to be honest. And I've lived here my whole life, I think I got really into style and, kind of experimenting with outfits in college. And it took me a while to like really like get out of that shell a little bit, but over time,
it's a confidence thing too. Like you really need to be confident in yourself to then wear, like obviously wear whatever you want, and like people are gonna say things anyways, but you just can't be bothered.
Yeah. I know when I was first starting my fashion blog, I would like go out with my like little camera and
I love it.
and my tripod, and I would find like cute walls, because there's a lot of cute walls like around Cleveland, and it's a pretty, there's not really that much walking traffic. So I was like, okay, this gives me confidence because there's not a lot of people. But the problem is, while I was taking some photos, if even one person walked by, they would stop, they would stare, they would like slow down their car, they would even try to talk to me, and I'm like, so it's kind of like in New York, it's funny.
Yeah.
It's the absolute opposite, because it's many people.
I walked around in that hot pink coat for Fashion Week, and I got like compliments, and half the people didn't even turn to look. If I wore that in Cleveland, oh my gosh, I'd probably be on some Instagram the next day.
Like, what are they wearing? And it's just like a different, it's just different group of people. But I think the one beauty of it, and again, that's why it's really exciting to me that, you started this business with, fashion talks to kind of, this is like really a common thread that I've been talking about in every single episode with every single person, which is just kind of like, how can we continue to create these like fashion gathering places in cities like Cleveland and other cities in general. I want to advocate for other places too, because I think anyone who even lives outside of New York or LA deserves to have those spaces. Because like, I mean, when we had that event last weekend, I was literally eyeing everyone's outfits. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, and there were some great pieces up for grabs that I was like, okay.
Yeah, it shows it's funny because that event really shows a reflection of people's style in Cleveland.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh my god, we could have done a whole study.
Yeah, we got ideas for next time.
Oh my gosh.
No, that's really true, because like when I go back home to Toronto or I go to New York, like the pieces that I'm gonna automatically pick to wear are so different than when I'm in Cleveland. But like you said, Cleveland does have a very unique fashion kind of community.
Yeah.
And I definitely want to build on that, you know, with Fashion Talks. And like even like I've had people message me and be like, you know, thank you, because of your events I am now like going back to wearing more pieces that I wouldn't have experimented with. Or like I'm finding my style again, or I'm finding other people to share my style with. And it's like you just got to find the right people and the community, because definitely like the mid-tier cities, obviously they're a little bit more safe because we don't have such a strong fashion industry, but I mean it can still be there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think, what was I gonna say? Yeah, and I think it's like sometimes there's just this activation needed, you know. I think I used that word when I wrote the story about you. Like I was like, you know, you're trying to activate the spaces that, like, because the people exist, the style exists. There's a rich history of like the garment industry had a lot of factories here in Cleveland.
I've heard a lot about that.
Yeah, and a lot of cool designers here.
We have some great thrift scene, like shops. Our thrift scene is pretty strong.
Yeah, the vintage scene, the and the art scene. I talk a lot about how I feel like the fashion community, well, in general, anywhere overlaps with the art community.
Definitely.
But I think here, like, there's a really strong art community, like a lot of galleries, a lot of artists, a lot of fine artists, a lot of photographers. Like, they all overlap, because at the end of the day, I mean, fashion is an art too, you know?
I think people just, like, the more you hear about it, the more common it will become. Like, even now, when I tell people that I work in fashion, it's like, what? You know? Or, like, here... Like, actually, this happened to me last night.
Really?
Yeah, it was funny because somebody introduced me, and then the other lady was like, the way she looked at me, I was like, she looked down on me real quick, and then and she's like, yeah, so she's like, so you work for somebody and do stuff here? And I'm like, no, I have my own business, and we showcase local, national, international designers that create their own clothing. And she was kind of like taken aback, because I don't think they realize like fashion is not just clothing in a shop. Yeah,
like a boutique or
there's like
retail.
There's so much more behind like the business, right? Like the production, the models, the hair and makeup, the sponsor. Like there's just so much that goes into it that people don't realize.
And you're introducing it, and you're so right about how like if it makes it more common the more you talk about it, and the more events happen, and it just people talk, you know, people like it goes through the grapevine. That's one thing about Cleveland. The grapevine is strong.
It's very strong. It's so funny though, because so many people still think like I'm a designer. Like every time like someone introduces me and they're like, yeah, she's like, she has fashion talks and she's a designer. I'm like, no, I'm not a designer. But it's really funny. Like it's a lot like you said, like that, like education, that base foundation. Like that's where Cleveland is at, but like we definitely have room for growth a lot.
100%. And there's people with the talent and the ambition who want to keep it going, and that's something I really truly never thought. Like if you told me 3-4 years ago, like that, you know, it would be where it is now, I'd be like, there's no way. Well, and like I guess since we're on the topic of your business and fashion talks, can you tell me a little bit about just how it got started and what was kind of the thought process behind, because you know, you can, when you start a fashion business, I would assume you could go towards a lot of different models, you know, of what to do. What made you want to do this kind of model for a business for fashion here in Cleveland?
So to be honest, like I've been working in the Canadian fashion industry now, it's been like probably 7-8 years. So I started when I was really young, like while I was studying. I was a psych major, but I fell into fashion on the side, and I I would just volunteer for fun at events because I was like, oh my God, this is fun. I'm backstage. I get to meet models. And then it kind of snowballed. Like, people started knowing me. They started reaching out to me. I ended up leading teams, being part of shows. I ended up producing shows. Probably, I think I was one of the youngest producers, helping with production in Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. And then when I moved to Cleveland, I was kind of in the mindset that, okay, well, I'm going to just work in a hospital in Cleveland, and then I'll like go back to Toronto and do my shows. Cause I mean, they were still happening. I was still flying out for them. And then COVID hit. The borders got shut down. Right. And then I had to reevaluate, and I was like, am I comfortable going back to do events that are like hundreds of people, thousands at some point, with this like pandemic that we absolutely don't know what's going to happen after? And so you know, that's when I started like my accounting business, and I just kind of did that for the pandemic. And I mean, I liked it, but it wasn't, you know what I mean, like it wasn't my creative thing. And then when we got better, I was like, you know what, I think I'm gonna try it on my own. Because right before COVID hit, I was actually planning like a little panel, like a women's fashion panel. And I remember so vividly because the week we went into lockdown was the week I was securing my venue. And they emailed me and they were like, we're going into lockdown. And I was like, oh my God. But I had like done research. So I had been going to a lot of like quote unquote fashion events in Cleveland. And not everything I went to was what I expected it to be. Like, obviously I was coming in with the mindset that like, oh, Toronto, New York, elevated, professional, diverse, inclusive. And then I came and not all of them were inclusive. Like, it got to a point where I'm a social person. I really wanted to go to some events, but when I looked at like their promotions or their Instagram or their website, I didn't see any people of color. I'm just going to be honest, right? And it was up to a point where I would message people and be like, do you have diverse audiences? Like, if you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to show up in a room where no one looks like me and then I'm just awkwardly there because you know what I mean?
You want to know if there's a space.
Yeah. And
you know?
I remember someone saying like, we can't control who we invite. And I was like, girl,
what?
Wait, what? I know. I was like, yeah. But like, it got to a point where I was getting annoyed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I'm like, I want to go to these events, but like, I'm not really seeing the inclusion and the actual diversity, because I'm just going to say it. A lot of people in Cleveland think that diversity is that you're American and I'm European. You'd be surprised.
Really?
Yeah, but I'm like, no. Where are the actual people?
Then that would make me diverse because I'm European.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I was on a women's panel.
Yeah.
It was like all white women, me and one black girl. But they were preaching diversity because they were not all American. So that was like, I think that was where like the shock started setting in, where I was like, I kept saying someone should do something.
Yeah.
Like, I kept saying, oh my God, someone should do something. Someone should do something. And then I got to a point where I was like, well, why don't I do it? And then I planned like my first event in like 2021, like January.
It was a mood board event or something.
Yes, our first ever vision board event.
Yeah.
Because we're not even 2 years old yet. I think our like second anniversary is coming up in a couple months for Fashion Talks. But like, I did that event as a tester just to see if like, you know, people would come, because obviously I'm not from Cleveland. I'm not born and bred Cleveland. I'm not like, you know, people would be like, where are you from? East side or west side? And I was like, wait, hold up.
Us and our east side, west
I know.
Side,
it was like, I like, now I know. But like, you know, it was a lot for me, like this culture of like fashion, but also like Cleveland is very, it's a very proud city.
Yeah.
People love Cleveland, and I love that. But it's like, when you're new, you're just like, wait, what do I have to know? Should I know this? And people like,
what am I proud of?
Yeah, they're like, what high school did you go to? And I'm like, I'm Canadian.
That's funny.
It was really funny. So I did the first event, and then right after that, I decided I was going to do the runway, and did it within 3 months. So it was kind of like this mix of like space that I wanted to be part of, and this need that I saw, and like just feedback. Because I had people like, okay, the vision board event that I first threw was like nothing big, like 15 women. And I met like a friend of mine, and she was like, you know, from a East Asian country, and she was like, she was very hesitant when I invited her. And I was like, I wonder why she doesn't want to come. Like, I was just curious. And I kept telling her, I'm like, you should come. Like, you'll really enjoy it. Like, I would really love for you to come because I truly thought she would enjoy it. And she messaged me and she was like, do you think with my level of English I could come to your event? And I was like, I did not even, like, that did not even cross my mind that that is what you were thinking of. I honestly just thought you weren't comfortable with me. And she's like, no, I love you. And she's like, she's like, I've been to events before where people wouldn't talk to me because my English is not strong. And I was like, see, I was thinking about it from like how I look different. But when I open my mouth, I sound the same.
And there's all these different,
you know what I mean? Like, how would I have ever thought about that?
Yeah.
Because in Toronto, I had a lot of friends who English was their second language, but it was never, we never had that problem.
Yeah.
So when she said that, I was like, yeah, you're coming and you're going to love it. And like, I'm definitely going to make sure that I remember this. So like,
yes.
Now when I plan future events, I'm like, I don't care. Like, whether you speak English or not, or what you look like you should be able to show up, be fashionable, make friends, and feel like a community.
Yeah.
You know?
That's the whole point.
But it was like such a shocker because even like you just
Yeah.
don't know until you know.
Yeah. And I think that's so interesting how there's these different levels of like need for like inclusivity, different levels of inclusivity, because it's like you may think like people look different but they also sound different, and
It's
they
just
may
so
not
layered.
feel
Right, but if I hadn't asked her, I would never have known.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I would have just been like, maybe she's just not comfortable. Because I wasn't even thinking at that level.
Yeah.
But anyways, it was like a mix of all of this, like just need for community, seeing what I could create. Because I mean, I've done it in Toronto. So I was like, why not just try to do it here? I kept meeting the right people. And then I did the first Fashion Talks runway. And it was a success. And I'm like, forever grateful for the people that like believed in me in that first year, because there were still a lot of people that were like literally that told me straight like, don't do it. Like,
really?
Yeah, I remember one lady was like, oh, you can't charge people, no one's gonna pay you, and you can't make money from this, don't do it. And I was like, excuse me, like, first of all, I've done it in Toronto and I want to do it that way. I don't want to do it the way it's already being done, because to be honest, a lot of hair and makeup models and photographers try to go to New York and work there, right? But I'm like, you could have a professional experience here so that you know like the level that you got to be at to go to the bigger city.
Yes.
Right? Like, I can help elevate your brand and for you to understand how to get from here to there. Whereas I went to some shows where it was really unprofessional. And I'm like, okay, clearly there's no contracts in place. There's no rehearsals. Like, at one point I heard that they were just like, I have model castings, and then we select a certain amount of models for designers, and there's like, we take care, it's like a proper like process. Some shows literally will do model castings, cast all the models, they show up the day of, and the designers pick who they want before the show.
That's so chaotic.
Girl, I could never. But I mean, it's just, there's different, it's like different levels of like, when we don't have a proper fashion industry that's backed by sponsors and funding, that's the level you're at. But like, once you can start thinking more professionally, I think it could be more sustainable too.
That's a good word, honestly, because then all these people, whatever field they're in, whether it's photography, modeling, designers, business, stylists, they will have proper training and like experience if they're
not going to be shocked when they go to a bigger city and people are like, well, I need X, Y, and Z from you, and they're like, oh.
And that's such a good point. It's all about like fostering the talent that is here, but there's just not, the knowledge. And there's people that are knowledgeable about like the industry even here, but I think it's just about
a lot of them
bringing
move.
It together, and they move.
They go to LA or they go to New York.
Yes.
That's what I was hearing when I moved here.
Yes.
A lot of they were like, like, I know this person, they were so great, and they went to LA.
Yeah.
Oh, they went to Miami. Oh, they went to New York.
Oh, I would hear that all the time in my industry, in journalism too. Like literally, like, and as I was graduating in Cleveland, I was like looking for mentors and cool people, and I'm like, oh, this person works for the Washington Post. Oh, they're already out.
Yeah, they're already gone.
Yeah. So, but there's still people who are here, and
but that shows how much talent there is here.
Yes, it does, and I don't know. I think it's just like a cool thing. I think so. You're going. So you've had the two shows. What are kind of biggest takeaways, biggest like goals for moving forward after those two?
I think really just improving overall. I'm a perfectionist. The Virgo in me.
Yes.
Of
course you're a Virgo. Of course you are. Oh my gosh.
Can you tell?
Evan's a Virgo too.
Oh, is he?
Yeah. I love Virgos.
See, this is why we get along.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just like I see all of the small parts that need to be put together better. I know everyone's always like congratulating me and like, oh my God, this was amazing. And I'm like, this is not even like this is 60% of what I could do if I had more. Like what I did in Toronto versus what I did in Cleveland, there's a difference. Like I think I could still elevate to that level. So I don't know, just, keeping it sustainable, putting Cleveland kind of on the map in some sense, or just making it bigger. Because I mean, we are attracting national and international creatives. So I want to see how we can grow.
Yeah.
And be sustainable.
Yeah. And this is kind of like adjacent to it, but I've been talking a lot with, I have a lot of friends working in the film industry. Obviously, my boyfriend, he's worked on a couple movies here and stuff. And like the movie industry has had their sights on Cleveland for a long time. And it's finally growing with more places coming here, shows coming here, because it's like overall cheaper. It has like the same landscape kind of.
It could look like New York or
Toronto. Could look like New Yorker. Yeah, like I was rewatching literally the other day. I was rewatching Captain America 2 or something, and the one chase scene is in like
it's in downtown, right?
It's downtown, and it's pretending to be DC. And I actually interviewed the Russo brothers, the directors for Cleveland Magazine. It was really interesting. And they have all this, they're in LA now, but like they have all this passion still for Cleveland to come back. So I think that's also a good feeling to know that we have these connections. We have these like cheerleaders outside of Cleveland too. And I hope the same level happens with fashion and style. Like I really do. I think it could. And really like seeing what you've accomplished already has given me so much more inspiration and hope. I think it like partially inspired me like, yeah, I could write about style. I could do that here. Why not?
Yeah, I know. Whenever like I reach out to the media, I'm like, you guys want to write about a fashion show?
I do. Exactly. And so another question I kind of just thought of, I don't know if I've ever like really asked you it. So you obviously work with a lot of small designers, and I feel like a lot of small designers are, well, they're obviously the future, but they're just really these days like coming up with such cool stuff. And I think, I talked to Ashley for one of the last episodes, and it's just so interesting. And it's such a like hard industry really to get into from a design perspective. So from your experience, like what do you think like small designers can do to kind of really set themselves apart and kind of cut through the noise, especially these days?
I think truly Cleveland specifically, I think a lot of them need to realize that there's a whole business aspect. I think a lot of people in the creative industry in general don't realize that, yes, it's a creative industry. Yes, it can be fashion or design or whatever it may be, but it's a business. You got to think from the legal point of view. You got to think from agreements, contracts, copyrights, all of that stuff. Like sometimes I feel like we get lost in like the creative aspect where you should be growing and making money as well. And I'm going to be that person to say, you need to do something that makes you money so that you can use that money to then do the thing that makes you happy and keeps you creative, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're not making money, you're not sustainable and you're going to go out of business within the 5 years, because the lifeline of typical any business, really, a startup is like 5 years. Like if you pass your 5-year point, you're more likely to last. So it's like already you're in a creative industry. Now you're thinking, okay, clothing, all of like the sewing, like it's a lot. It's a lot of money. Yes. So I think if they look at themselves as a business that is creative rather than a creative like outlet or like a fashion brand that happens to have to do taxes, you know?
Yeah, it has like, to be weaved in.
Yes, I think like the educational portion, if we could educate more on that, it would help. Because, okay, how do you get funding? How do you maybe partner with bigger stores? Well, how do you get an intern? Like the amount of creative businesses I've seen that they're doing everything, and I'm like, why don't you get an intern? And they're like, I couldn't do that. And I'm like, are you an LLC? They're like, yes. I'm like, are you a legitimate business? Yes. So reach out to the closest university, college, high school, and be like, okay, well, is anyone interested in a fashion internship for hours? or if you have a budget, pay them. But like so many people don't even realize that they could do that. Like get a social media intern, get someone who's eager to learn, because most of those interns are gonna want to go to New York or somewhere else to do their internship. Why not do it here?
Yeah.
Like we have Kent right there.
Yeah. I always think about that because like, I mean, like the 2 interns you had help with our event last weekend, they were amazing.
Yeah.
And there's, you know, both so stylish. And I kind of thought about them because, you know, I went to CSU, you know, but I think about like the fashion students and I'm like, where are they needed, like,
so
where do they go for opportunities?
So a lot of the Kent girls, and Kent is such a great school, they go to New York, Milan, and a bunch of other like just, but the ones that don't go on those, like they get stuck having to do internships in Cleveland that are not as creative from what I've heard in feedback. So for me, I'm like, we have all these creative businesses that just don't see themselves in the right light. So they're not taking opportunities. So I feel like they're missing on growth opportunities, because if they just had like one extra person to help them, I'm sure they'd get a lot further or be able to do more.
And I like how you're pointing out that like you need help.
You do.
I think
100%.
It's a classic. I mean, I do this too as an artist with like writing. Like I'm like, I got to do everything myself. And it's just like certain things I need help with. Like you know.
I mean, I still am guilty of trying to do it all myself, even though I have a team and I have amazing, like they're just so talented. There's certainly points where I'm like, you know what? I can just do it myself. And then I'm like, no, I can't. You know, like I've literally gotten to a point where I'm like, it's okay if we don't find a decor sponsor, I'm just going to do it myself. And then I'm like, Aimon, don't do it. You can't over promise, because like, it's just, you need to, it's also, you know what? It's also a control thing, because it's like your baby. It's a new business and you don't want someone else coming in, and sometimes you just need to let go, because I can probably 99% guarantee that where your business started is not where it's going to be in 3 years.
That's such a good point.
Like you really have to have, like, if you're going to be that business owner, founder, CEO that's like stuck on your idea, you're not going to go far.
You need to kind of like let yourself grow and like other.
You have to be open to opportunities. I feel like, especially in Cleveland, you know how you said the grapevine is really strong. It's truly strong, because I've gotten some amazing opportunities through people who just thought of me, right? And if I wasn't just open to it, I would have never. Literally, I had someone, she had come to my events. She was a huge supporter. She's like, hey, there's this like thing happening. I think you would be perfect for it. And I had zero idea what it was. I was like, sure, what is it? Let me know. And I like get on this meeting with this lady, and she's like, yeah, it's like mental health and sports and fashion. And I'm like, perfect. I love mental health. I know nothing about sports, and I love fashion. I think I could
2 out of 3.
2 out of 3. You know what I mean? So part of me was like, sure, let me see. And then it turned out to be the all-star private runway for the LA designer that I walked in knowing nothing about. I was like, oh, look at these people. They're like in sports. And then I'm like, oh shoot, they're famous.
I know. Evan saw my stories and they're like, oh my God, this is like huge people in sports. I'm like, I don't know, just
that was me. That was exactly me. I was like, somebody educate me.
That was crazy. See, and I think that's a big thing in these mid-sized cities. I know just in Cleveland, like it's you have the opportunity to become very visible, especially if you're doing something that is scarce. So like fashion, you know? So of course everyone's going to think of you, like, you know? And I hope it inspires also other people who I know like out there in Cleveland and even Ohio, making clothing, wanting to be in the fashion space. Like I hope it inspires them to kind of make themselves more visible.
We have talented designers. They just need a little bit of help. And I do think there's funding out there. I just don't know how many of them are thinking about it.
Yeah. But that's good advice, definitely, to like focus on the business side of it. I know I'm reading a book about Alexander McQueen and Galliano, and it's really interesting. It's about kind of how their stories kind of converge in a lot of ways, and the one thing that is consistent with both of them. I mean, they were geniuses. They were amazing. They literally like revolutionized fashion with their clothing, but both struggled with the same thing, that when they got to a certain point, all the business side of it started catching up with them, and it was hard for them to adjust. And that's where kind of things started to
because you want to grow, but you also want to be at the same level of your growth.
Yeah.
Right now, like and I think sometimes people don't realize this, but you know, everyone's like, oh, I really want to go viral, or I want to work with, like, maybe a designer wants to work with, I don't know, what is it, like Macy or Target, like you want them to, okay, but let's say you got that opportunity right now. Are you, from the business point of view, ready? Right? Or even like just social media alone, like when you look at your socials, your website, your Instagram, you don't have to like spend thousands of dollars on photo shoots, but like the way your pages look, does it look professional? Are you a business account? Right? Because I remember in Toronto, I was working with a designer, and she was like, you know, her pieces were stunning. Her socials didn't reflect that, but she was upset because she's like, you know, why won't boutiques carry me? And why won't, she wanted to work with like the Bay, which is like our version of like, I guess, Nordstrom or whatever. And I was like, okay, let's say you're the marketing lead of Nordstrom. Open your Instagram. Would you pass it or would you look at it? Right? I know we all love our businesses and we love what we do, but sometimes we need to give ourselves a reality and check and think from a third point of view.
Yeah, and like you said, separating it from like as a baby, and which is so hard. I know with like something that's creative, and it's like literally like, but if you're absolutely right. Like if you want to make it a sustainable business, you got to look. Yeah. And that kind of ties in with like, I don't think I added it to this, but just a question about social media, just how it has changed the landscape. I think with so many of things you do, like with fashion, 100%. Business, and being an influencer. I think it's great. So yeah, let's talk about that.
I mean, I know there's like pros and cons. Yeah. But I truly do think there's more pros than cons, just because it has made networking and connections so easy. Yeah. Like the amount of people I've connected through Instagram and then met them in real life, or they saw something I did and they reached out, like, it is so powerful. Yes. For small businesses, especially because it's free. Yes. In my first year when I was doing fashion talks, if I'm going to be honest, we didn't run any paid campaigns on anything. All we did was post on Instagram, and we had almost 300 people seated just because of Instagram and word of mouth. And I think a lot of people don't realize how strong social media can be, especially if you're an introvert and you don't really like talking to people. That's great. This is the thing for you. Like, I'm super social, so when I message them, I'm like, let's get coffee. Yeah. But you don't need to do that, right? Yeah. Like the amount of like models, designers, media people that I have found just through socials, or that other people have sent me like, hey, you should connect with this person. Like, that's crazy. And I think we get caught up in the numbers game. Yeah. I don't have X amount of followers. I don't have X amount of views, but you know, it's like that. I know it's everywhere. They're like, you know, you got 30 likes, but what if 30 people walked into your store? Whatever. It's true. I think sometimes we have to look at it from like a physical point of view, and then people are like, oh, but like my engagement is not a lot. And I'm like, if you have 1% engagement, that's groundbreaking on social media. So I don't know. Because I remember one business owner was like, I want it to be like at least 40%. I'm like, girl, that's not even possible unless you're like freaking Kim Kardashian, probably. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. It's like, people have such short attention spans, but social media is so powerful for influencers, for businesses, for everything. You just have to know how to navigate it properly. How to navigate it and make it work for you. Right? And which social media. Like, maybe you're not an Instagram person. Maybe TikTok is your thing. Yeah. Maybe it's Twitter. Maybe it's Facebook. Like, know your clientele, because all of the platforms have different clientele. Yeah, I've always been oscillating between different sites. Like, for a while it was Twitter, because there's a lot of media professionals on there, and that had helped me connect with so many people, so many editors, so many pitches that I could send. Like, everything was through that. And I don't go on it that much anymore, but when I do, it's to look for pitch calls. That's like a great place for it. Oh, I didn't know. Yeah. And now for TikTok, like TikTok has become really... Yeah, your TikTok is great. Thank you. But it's really helped with, because Instagram has been through a lot of transitions. I still love it because I love photos. I love a nice feed. But, TikTok has allowed for me to kind of have these conversations, because that's, if anything, that's my brand, like having conversations. And I'm like, okay. Absolutely. And now with Instagram too, like you still have this like kind of portfolio of what your it's work like your is. Resume, and then TikTok is like the interview. Yeah, kind of the discussion. The discussion, yeah. Yeah, and I think that's so important, because like I always tell people, like, the best way of what I've learned, at least with like connecting with people, is
people love to be praised.
Yes.
People
I was going to say engagement, like their stuff, comment.
Yeah, you don't even have to message them yet.
Yeah.
You can just comment, you can like, you can repost their story.
Just follow them.
If you genuinely like their work and you admire someone, like this happened to me, one of my favorite fashion writers, Rachel Chashian, she writes now for Harper's Bazaar, but she had this exclusive newsletter, and for the longest time, like, you had to like DM her and just like hope that she would see it and she would add you to the newsletter. It was like a complete fashion newsletter of all this insider stuff and just whatever. But her, I had messaged her a while back and she never got back to me because it went into her request, yada, yada. And I'm like, oh, whatever. And then like a year or two later, I posted and tagged her just genuinely because I really liked an article she wrote on Christopher John Rogers or something. And I reposted, I said, oh, I love the story she wrote, blah, blah, blah. And she responded and said, oh my God, I didn't even see this message. Yeah, I'll add you to the list right now.
The amount of people I think that are just scared to send the message. And I always say this, I'm like, whether it gets lost in their DMs or not, and I know because everything gets lost in mine, they're eventually probably going to see it.
Yeah.
And a lot of brands, especially like for influencers, they really are focusing on their DMs.
Yeah.
Like whenever I DM a brand or even if I tag them, they reply to me right away. And it's not because like I'm an influencer, but it's because they're watching their customers and the people who are interacting with them because they have to, because everything is on Instagram and TikTok. So I would also say don't be afraid of just sending the first message.
Yeah. Yeah. Cold messages and cold emails can be scary, but you never know.
Yeah.
You never know. And yeah, it can be discouraging. My friend, who's also a writer, we were just talking actually about how she was just like so discouraged because like she posted something about her writing and like it didn't get any engagement. And I'm like, girl, I posted like my newsletter that I worked so hard on. It got like 6 likes, but I got 2 responses and 2 like reposts of people saying, oh, I really like this. It really resonated with me. And like,
plus,
that's enough.
people are going to continue to see it in the future.
Yes. And it'll build. It'll build. And that's why I'm like, I like what I did.
It's credibility on you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think like you can't let that, I think it's like finding that balance with social media, also psychological, of not letting it like bog you down and stop
Don't
you.
let it consume you, but like think of it as like an accessory.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
like it's there to elevate and help you and start a conversation, but it's not there to take over the outfit.
No, exactly. That's a good metaphor. I love a good metaphor.
Put that in quotes.
Yeah. I know I need it. So speaking of accessories and clothing, so kind of wrapping a little bit back to your style. So I thought it was very interesting when you told me that you don't shop a lot, actually.
Yeah.
But
I seem like a shopper, right?
yeah. Well, and I think there's sometimes this assumption with like influencers, oh, they shop a lot, they get a lot gifted, whatever. But I love how you have such a rich wardrobe and a rich style, but you seem to be very intentional about how you shop. So tell me a little bit about that process and how you got to that point.
I think, honestly, I shopped decently a lot in Toronto. And, you know, I had a lot of events to go to. I was getting things gifted. Like, I was in the industry. So it was a lot easier to go through stuff, but also a lot easier because you had things to go to.
Yeah.
Then when I moved here, all of a sudden I had absolutely nothing to go to. So I had my whole closet. And I was like, okay, I'm obviously not going to... part of me was like, okay, I'm not going to shop because I want to save up for bigger purchases like bags. And then part of me was like, but I'm also not going anywhere, so why am I shopping? Because I wanted to spend money on travel. Me and my husband love to travel. The amount of travel we did in the last year alone was crazy. Like, we literally, at one point, like, my team would be like, so are you traveling this month? And I'm like, maybe. And they're like, what does that mean? And I'm like, Friday, either I'll know if I'm getting on a plane the next day or not. And literally that's how it was. There has been times where we booked something like 2 days before, and then I'll message everybody, I'm leaving for this place, and I'll be back in like 4 days. And they'd be like, what is happening? And I'm like, I'm just doing something that I've always wanted to do. And I love to travel. And with that, I realized that, one, I want to create content when I travel. I want to have cute outfits, but I also don't want to just continue spending money on clothes that I'm going to wear once.
Yeah.
I'm a repeater. I don't just wear something once. However, there are certain occasions where I need an outfit that's like a one-time wear. Do you know what I mean? Like when I have a really big event, or let's say a fashion show, or like New York Fashion Week. Like, I feel like those are outfits that once they're photographed, I'm not wearing it to New York Fashion Week again. I could wear it in Cleveland in a different way, or I could wear pieces in a different way, but I can't put that outfit together like that again. That's my mindset.
No, that's
so
interesting.
For me, I want to make sure I can repeat all my clothing with different pieces. But also, if I'm going to want like a one-time outfit, then I want it to be something that's either sustainable, something that's borrowed, or something that I can, so like I'll pull from designers. So they'll get recognition, but then I also can return it to them and be like, thank you so much. And they're like happy because they got their piece back, and I don't have to worry about when am I going to wear this outfit again.
Yeah.
I just don't want it laying in my closet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I feel like there's a lot of people, we got into this really big like haul culture
Yes.
over the last 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
Especially with like Shein.
Yeah.
And that, like, I don't understand, because I'm like, one, you're wasting your money, because I always think about it from a business point of view. I'm like, two,
yeah,
why? Like,
yeah, it's
it
so
just,
much.
It just doesn't make sense. And I realize, like, I'm the kind of person that I have pieces in my closet from like 7 years ago that you would not believe are that old, because I just keep them in good shape, and I feel like it's my style, so I can still pull it off. So yeah, I just don't shop a lot, and it took me a while, because I definitely had the urge to like go into Zara and be like, oh my god, I want to buy all of this, but now I'm trying to be like, okay, well, how many times am I gonna wear it? Is it gonna be worth it? Can it fit with multiple other pieces? And I think Pinterest helps a lot. I love Pinterest. I have a board for like every single thing you could imagine.
Same.
Yeah, we are
too.
the Pinterest addicts, but like I have a board for like the things I want, which are things that I will actually like I could buy, and then I have like a style board.
Yes.
And now I'm trying to be more like restrictive, where I'm like, okay,
yes,
because I love clothing, but I'm a shoes and bag kind of girl. So I'm like, my clothes will always change, because I'm sure my style will change, but I feel like the bags and the shoes I have should always go with everything.
Oh,
so
that's a good rule to have, because I feel like sometimes it's the opposite for a lot of people for some reason.
But then you overconsume.
Yeah.
Because then you're like, oh well, I need that specific. Yeah, same. So it's like, I think about it from like an investment point of view, where I'm like, okay, well, I have this bag now, I'm gonna have an outfit, but I could have multiple outfits, right? So I don't want to overconsume on like either end. So it's kind of weird. I'm like trying to like realize, because it didn't hit me until like a year back, where I was like, oh, I haven't shopped. Like I went back home. I went home, and my mom was like, let's go shopping, and I was like, oh yeah, because like Cleveland also doesn't have any major shopping areas. I think that helped. Do you know what I mean? Like Beechwood and Legacy, but it's not like New York and Toronto. Like when you go to a mall, like you have everything, right? So like I went back home, and my mom's like, yeah, let's go shopping, and I went into the mall, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't shop anymore.
It's almost, it's not on top of mind all the time.
Yeah,
here.
it's not. It's such a big thing for us in Canada. Like you just go to the mall to chill, or it's not really a thing here. So I think that helped me be like, okay, we're gonna practice this habit of not shopping unless we really need it, and then if it's like a one-time piece, I'll try to invest. Or like for this year's runway, I'm already thinking about my outfit, because that's more important than everything else for me. And I met this new designer in New York. Oh, I can't remember the brand's name. I will send you her Instagram. Her stuff was so beautiful, and she does like custom, and the pricing was amazing, and it would have been the same price that I would have bought like a one-time outfit for the show. So I was like, you know what, if I do it, I'd rather get a piece from her, because then that will be more meaningful, and then obviously I'll rewear it. But I'm trying to be more like sustainable.
No, and that is because it's like, it's thinking about cost per wear, which I think a lot of people, I think it's funny you mentioned the whole haul culture, because I think now we're seeing just this
rewear culture.
Yes, the rewear, the cost per wear culture. Like I think a lot more.
I mean, I thrift a lot, which people are really shocked about for some reason.
Believe it.
And I'm like, no.
Because you can find so much good stuff.
Yeah, I feel like I'm like great at like, before I walk in, I'm like, okay, in my mind, I'm like, this is what I need, and I usually walk in and I find exactly what I need.
I always do that too. My mom raised me on that mindset. She's like, just think of it in your head and you will find it. And I literally had that experience recently when I went. And for me, I know, I was raised thrifting, and it sometimes led to a lot of overconsumption, because you could overconsume on thrifting too. And
justify the cost.
Exactly. But I finally kind of have found a better balance with it. But what was I saying? Yeah, I think it's just, now I think a shift is happening where people have been overwhelmed with haul culture, have been overwhelmed with all the fast fashion hauls, and they're like, okay, wait, how do I take care of my clothes? How do I learn how to sew? What do I need to do? How do I properly wash a sweater? Stuff like that. Or how do I take care of the things I have and rewear them and, take care of them instead of constantly thinking what's the new. And it's interesting. I don't know, it's just interesting how that's going to kind of weave into the fashion industry too.
Yeah, I think sustainability is such a huge thing. And
yeah,
I know a lot of people, when I say sustainability, they think just clothing, right? But I'm like, their sustainability is as an industry as a whole.
Yeah.
Like, even from a business point of view, like, just sustainability and growth.
Yeah. How can things last?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's absolutely what I think of when I think of that word, because I think it's like longevity, instead of just, disposability.
Overconsumption.
Yeah. Let me think. We have a little bit more time here. So, I mean, overall, I don't know. Is there anything else we want to touch on?
Did we cover everything?
We covered like everything. We even had time to talk about your influencer work as an influencer and stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I guess what's like the biggest thing you see kind of shifting with like fashion influencers? Because off camera we talked a little bit about like the whole thing that happened where the PR list was leaked through TikTok, and that changed like the policy around New York Fashion Week.
Yeah.
Because TikTok I think has changed the game really. Just like Instagram I think did when it first started and became popular. But what are your thoughts?
I mean, I have lots of thoughts on influencing in general because I've been in it for a long time. It's funny, I literally just talked about this on my stories yesterday. There's this de-influencing trend happening.
Oh, yes.
But also, part of me, and this is like where like I get frustrated, is there's still so many brands and so many marketing people that can't tell the difference between different influencers. And it's very interesting because Cleveland doesn't have a strong influencer industry.
Yeah.
When as an influencer or as a brand, because I see both sides, right? With Fashion Talks, I work with influencers, and as an influencer, I work with brands, right? In Toronto, it's different. There's agencies, there's bigger brands, like you have launch events to go to, there's like PR events, there's like a lot going on. And so you're able to build relationships with brands, with the people behind the scenes, and they really understand your influence. Now, when you come to somewhere like Cleveland, where a lot of brands don't have representatives here, it's a lot more local brands that I would say the influencers are working with. But then also, there's a lot of people who buy followers.
Oh.
And I'm still shocked that people can't tell the difference.
Oh yeah, you're absolutely right with that,
So
because I've heard stories.
That is what is crazy to me, that there are still brands or just influencers that are like, and I think those are the ones where this de-influencing trend kind of stemmed from, because they're the ones that are just sharing products thoughtlessly because they got a free product, and then their audience is like, wait, what? And then this whole like de-influencing about like, there's no way, like there's so many products I've seen where I'm like, guys, no, like, you know what I mean, just like collaborations, and that makes people lose trust in you and your like brand as an influencer. And then it's like, if you're truly, and like this is the biggest like red flag, is you can tell, because just see if they work with actual brands that are paid, because if they're doing campaigns, that means they have to give their analytics to brands. But if they don't have the analytics to match their followers, then how are they going to continue their relationships with brands, right? Like I had this experience in Cleveland in the first year. We did influencer marketing because I was like, it's quite strong in Toronto. I've done it there, and we worked with a couple influencers, and gosh, was it not what I expected, So it's interesting. It's like tricky. I think we're definitely growing. There's a scene here, but I think brands on their end also need to be careful about who they're working with and what the results are.
Yeah. Because, and especially the point about like the buying followers, followers I don't know. I don't know how much followers are even going to really matter moving forward. I think like,
yeah, that's another
like,
thing.
Because on TikTok, you can accidentally just like
Go
get a
viral.
million followers.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, and I think people, it's like, it's just so fascinating to me. Like social media is so interesting to me.
Yeah.
Like not even just specifically fashion, but just in general.
In general, yeah.
It's so interesting. And it's like, it's fascinating now how a lot of like, you know, influencers and brands, even brands, are trying to mesh this perfect blend of authenticity, but also like we still need to keep our business going.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you find that authenticity and the whole de-influencing thing? I think to me, it's just interesting. Again, it's like just from a psychological standpoint, it's like, yeah, people have fatigue because they're just like, I'm tired of getting sold things to me. I'm tired of getting told like, everything's an advertisement, you know? And I think
not everybody now wants the same thing.
Yeah. Everyone's very individualized. Our feeds are super individualized. And it's just interesting because then the de-influencing thing, it's just kind of a buzzword at the end of the day. Because I think it's kind of like...
And it's going to end up influencing anyways.
It's still influencing. Yeah,
yeah,
people made that
telling
point
you the
immediately.
alternatives.
Yeah. Do you follow her is Pretty Critical on TikTok? She made a really good post about it. She just has a lot of...
I might have seen it.
Yeah, she just has a lot of cool videos just talking about like fashion and...
Yeah, I think like it's hard because for a period of time I didn't want to be called an influencer because I was like, oh, I'm just someone who works in the industry who happens to have a following, because my following was people from the industry. Yeah. Because I didn't want to give them my phone number, so I'm like, follow my Instagram. Like that was the thing because that's when Instagram started. Like that's how old, how long I've been in Instagram. But like now I think about it like, okay, I categorize influencers into kind of two categories. Like there are the online influencers and then there's like the actual people who have influence if they lost their Instagram. Oh. Because if Instagram shut down, how many of those influencers actually have influence? Right? Or like have you seen the stories on TikTok when the girls talk about like how they went to the influencer events and like all influencers are like super awkward or like they don't...
Yeah, they were immediately like, well, who's your agent?
Yeah. Like, ugh. No, like, you know what I mean? Like those, like there's influencers who just show their life, but they don't actually go out in person, or if put in a public situation, they might not be what you think they are online. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Versus people who, like me, work in the industry, or I do events and I also meet people, and it's like, yeah, if I lost my Instagram, that's fine because I have numbers and emails and people, and I could still connect you with someone. I could still message a model. You know what I mean? It's like a different kind both. Of... Yes. Yeah, and that's why I'm like, I'm not a big fan of the word influencer, but I get it. It's like a generalized term, but I think a lot of the audience is also realizing, like, do they want to follow this person who has like this so-called perfect life, or do they want to follow someone who's authentic?
Yes. And that's such a good distinction between those two groups of like, yeah, because, you know, I think a lot of people started thinking about that, like, wait, like, what if Instagram did just disappear? What if TikTok just disappeared?
I mean, that's happened, right? Like when it, like, what was it? Like it went down for a while?
It went down for a bit, yeah. And then I think there was like all this fear. I think still there's like discussions legally happening about TikTok being banned. I don't think it's going to happen. There's too much money in it.
They banned it from Parliament in Canada, and they're banning it in the for like the officials.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, probably not the rest,
because it's like a wild west app a little bit. So I understand the concern over it, but that's such a I'm realizing.
Or also like people who just lose their account.
Yeah,
that's happened a lot.
Especially with TikTok, they just get banned randomly.
Instagram too. Like I've seen quite a few like businesses in Cleveland that like lost their account, and it's like the hardest thing to recover.
No, it is, and it's like a lot of connections, but that's so. Yeah, those are such interesting points, and it is interesting to pick your brain about it because you have been in it for so long. It's so crazy to think about how being an influencer or content creator on Instagram and social media felt like such a new thing, but now there's gonna be like people like you, like. You're like a veteran. Like you're
kind of, I know, I feel old. I'm not that old, everybody.
No, I know you're not old.
I'm quite young. I look older than I am.
But it's just because so much time has gone by, and
I think the craziest thing was it last year when Instagram announced that they were gonna do like the Reels thing, you could get paid to post Reels. Yes. And like all of the bonus, like they're putting money into the app, and then they started. Honestly, I haven't had any like benefit from this yet, but I do have the feature like brands can see my profile, and if they want to work with me, it's directly through Instagram. So like I have a back end for it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because like Instagram is trying to monetize because they realize all these agencies and all these third-party platforms are connecting influencers and brands and making money. Why not do it in the app? So I think there's a lot more growth that we can even imagine that's coming.
Oh yeah.
But it's really interesting. And now there's that whole like verified. Did you hear about that? Instagram is you could be like verified. You pay $15 a month and you get more reach too.
Oh no, I didn't.
Yeah,
one thing I did hear about that some people are doing is like subscriber only stories or content.
I have that.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't know what I would use. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
I don't
have
think
my newsletter,
content,
so I don't know if it would just be
that's
something
true.
different than that. Yeah. But I realized that when I started my newsletter 2 years ago.
And there's like broadcast channels now.
Yeah. I was like, do you remember when they had IGTV? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
They just
it's gone now, right?
They launched it. I remember I made
now
like 3 videos.
Normal videos are gone too. Like any video you upload is a reel. Because I just uploaded a recap of last year's fashion, the runway, and it's like a video, and they're like, oh, it's gonna upload as a reel, and I was like, no, it's not gonna look good as a reel.
I do like that they can change. You can change like the cover of like whatever you have, and I think that just shows how.
And now you can add mentions in stories, which is helpful.
Yes, so they are like tweaking things, and I think Instagram needs to just embrace like this is the pretty app. This is where people want to make their brand look as visible as possible.
But they have a lot of monetization that goes on.
In
the platform. I feel like TikTok right now is what Instagram was a couple of years ago with like the whole monetization with influencers being paid by brands and all of that kind of stuff. So it's interesting.
Oh, that's so fascinating. Well, I think that might be our time, but as always, love talking to you, love picking your brain about everything.
Thank you for having me. This was like great. We went from like all over.
I know, we hit the whole spectrum, because at first I was like, oh, we might just only stay in one topic, which would be fine too, but there's just so much to cover. So this was super great. Good luck with everything. I'll just be on the lookout for the fashion show to come, and everything that you'll have, any other events you have coming up, and
thank you. Well, this was wonderful. Absolutely great chatting with someone who's like-minded, so it's always fun.
Of course. Always. All right, thanks for being here. Thanks for everyone for listening.